Welcome back to the Kino Cave, and today I'm going to be talking about X-Men, the movie from 2000. So it's a pretty big year for X-Men this year. We got X-Men 97 coming out really soon. I'm currently in my first watch through of the 90s X-Men cartoon, and it's going really well so far. So I'm interested to see what X-Men 97 brings to that show in its new season. And we've also got the Deadpool 3 movie with Wolverine, Hugh Jackman coming back. I don't know how I'm going to feel about that because I think Hugh Jackman's Wolverine got a perfect send off in Logan, and it's kind of weird now that Hugh Jackman's send off as Wolverine is going to be in this movie, but it's still cool to see Hugh Jackman in the blue and yellow, so for now I'm fine with it. I'll have to see the movie and find out. But today I'm talking about the original X-Men franchise. It's one of my favorite movie franchises when it comes to superhero movies. I think there's only one or two really bad ones. I know that's not a very popular take, but I always found something interesting in the X-Men movies that you don't find in a lot of other franchises like the DCU, MCU, or whatever CU or anything like that. I think X-Men had the most consistency, and each movie at least has something interesting to bring. It's not just the same kind of formulaic stuff over and over again, which I think is definitely making each of them worth watching and rewatching. So yeah, I absolutely love the X-Men franchise. It had a big impact on me when I was a teenager, watching them through, and I got to watch them again with my dad because he really likes them, and I grew really attached to the character of Wolverine as well. The character is very important to me, so I'm going to be hopefully going through them all this year. I wanted to do it last year, but I kind of didn't want to do it so soon into my YouTube career. Full speed ahead. We're doing the X-Men movies. It's a big year for X-Men, so I'm looking forward to going through these movies. I love the X-Men characters in general as well, especially visually, from like the 90s cartoon and the comic books. I love how they all have kind of different uniforms, but they stick with the same color scheme for the most part. Yeah, I think the X-Men are really, really cool. I love their origins as being representative of the civil rights movement, and kind of moving on from that, then they kind of become allegories for all sorts of minority groups, and I think it could be an allegory for most people in general. Like, I definitely see a lot of I definitely relate to a lot of the X-Men struggles, just trying to be seen for who they are, and things like that. So it's great as an allegory for minority groups and just people who feel like they're alone in the world when they're really not. So the X-Men work really well on that front. They've each got such cool, unique powers as well, which just adds to it. Just before I get into this movie specifically, none of my praise directed at this movie is not... None of my praise for this movie is directed at Bryan Singer. The guy's a piece of shit. Look into it if you want, if you don't already know. But yeah, I will not be praising Bryan Singer at all. The guy is a dick. So I'm going to praise the other aspects of this movie, and I'm going to keep the attention away from him because he doesn't deserve any of it. Also, full spoilers for this movie. It's 24 years old, so, and I want to get into it properly. So full spoilers for X-Men 2000. Instantly, this movie feels more real and grounded than, say, other kind of superhero media. I know that X-Men was basically the first Marvel movie to kind of kick off the popularity of them. We had Blade, but that was more of a dark, more adult-oriented film. In terms of bringing superheroes into the mainstream, it's X-Men and Spider-Man that did that job. Comic books were still very niche, and I think that's what gave the X-Men movies the opportunity to get into real world issues. You know, there's good and bad to the X-Men kind of trying to be more grounded and trying to stray away from their comic book origins, but I think it's a really strong statement when the film opens with a crowd of Jews being herded into a concentration camp, and one of them being Magneto. I think it just instantly creates a strong statement of, this film is not just a action-y superhero movie. This is like a real movie. This is an important movie. Easily the heart of this film lies in the relationship between Marie, who is Rogue, and Logan, who is Wolverine. they're both very similar. They've both got monsters living inside them. Rogue not being able to touch another human being without sucking the life out of them. I know it's not very well explained, but you get what's happening. And Wolverine containing this animalistic, monstrous side to him that can burst free at any moment and just tear people to shreds. Um, so Wolverine and Rogue are very alike in that sense. They're both lost souls. They both think that they're better off alone because society just rejects them at every turn. I know that's the case for every mutant, but especially so with the likes of Wolverine and Rogue, because they both have these kind of monsters living inside them. And it's great that they've created this found family for both each other and the rest of the X-Men. And because they can relate to each other so much, they just work together perfectly, and it works great for their character arcs, as well as Rogue allows Wolverine to open himself up to another person, and Wolverine gives Rogue a parental figure to lead her down the right path. It's excellent storytelling. There's some great scenes of tension in this film, specifically when Rogue is stabbed by Wolverine by accident and she sucks the life out of him and stuff. Such great tension in that scene, because you think Rogue's gonna die, and then you think Wolverine's gonna die, and you get a full grasp then of Rogue's powers, because that's the first time you realize that she can use her powers to absorb other mutants' powers. I'm guessing they didn't explain it much because Rogue is a very prominent figure in the 90s X-Men show. That's probably why they don't explain it too much. They kind of trust the slightly older kids now to know what her deal is, but it's still very well explained. And also the Statue of Liberty scene when you see Magneto's full powers when he takes off Cyborg's visor, and he has Wolverine completely stop dead. He uses all of their abilities against them, which provides for great tension. While each team member is definitely made valuable throughout the film, they make a great combination of powers. Each of them uses their powers in very unique and interesting ways. However, as characters, Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Storm, they're kind of put to the side in favor of Wolverine, Rogue, and Magneto's story, which I get because you're trying to tell a story with a team in 2 hours, and they do a great job of fleshing out these people's relationships and personalities. However, there's not much character development between Cyborg, Jean, Storm, even Professor X to an extent, although I feel like he does get a bit more. Maybe that's because of Patrick Stewart, but definitely the focus is on Wolverine and Rogue, and I understand that, but I do think it's something that they work on in later films. A couple of other things that the film suffers from, there's a lot of exposition. I get that, it's a comic book movie where you kind of need to start explaining stuff. There's whole scenes where they explain people's powers, how they work, and things like that. There's a lot of Magneto explaining what his machine does, and then the X-Men explain what the machine does, just in case the morons in the back of the theater weren't paying attention the first couple of times. But yeah, it's a lot of exposition. Again, something that I think they do fix in later films, and I get why it's there, but it's a little messy. The film also suffers from a fear of its comic book roots. I mentioned earlier that it does add to the film in that it can tell a more important, more grounded story. But on the other side of that coin, the, what would you prefer, yellow spandex scene, it's, a thing of you can still tell these important stories. The animated cartoon tells these really important stories, and the characters still wear bright yellow and blue. You can do it, but obviously this is a live action film, it's a blockbuster, they were afraid of not making money. I definitely understand why this stuff wasn't in the movie, but I think we definitely have the benefit of hindsight now that characters can wear the bright and colourful costumes and still tell grounded, real, emotional stories. That's something that definitely the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies would fix 2 years later. Those films are campy and comic booky, but they also have melancholy and important grounded storytelling on top of the comic booky campiness. I love the themes in this movie. I mentioned it earlier, the themes of oppression and themes of like minorities being oppressed. It's great that they got a gay actor to basically make a bunch of speeches talking about how America is not the land of tolerance or peace. That obviously, in the context of the film, it's mutants, but again, you have an openly gay actor saying these speeches. It's pretty obvious what the themes are. So no, the X-Men are not going woke just this year. Oh god, I hate that word. Anyway, the X-Men have always had a political and social undertones to them, and again, you have very gay man Ian McKellen, fantastic actor, making speeches about how America is not the land of tolerance that it was promised to be. And it's all on point. It's fantastic. This is where the film's strength really lies, in its themes and its allegories. You even have a definite conservative Senator Kelly talking about how these mutants are dangerous and they need to be registered, and people should be allowed to know whether they can be taught by mutant, and all this, like, and talking about mutant problems and comparing people to guns. All of these undertones are perfect, and I love how Senator Kelly, obviously it's a bad thing that happens to him, like he's forced to change into a mutant and he dies, but it is nice that he grows, and he has conversations with Storm, and he realizes what mutants go through on a daily basis, and he's able to grow and learn from that, which is absolutely fantastic storytelling. Just a little thought I have. There's going to be a couple of random thoughts put in here alongside the actual critical analysis, but I miss the sexiness of superhero movies. Like, the way a lot of superhero movies nowadays just feel very sterile, like they're afraid to explore anything beyond characters like hugging and kissing each other. I could get into the whole debate on whether or not sex scenes should be in movies, and obviously they shouldn't be in these movies for 12-year-olds, but there was still that little bit of just like friskiness, the little playful addition of a little sexiness in there, like when Jean and Wolverine are flirting with each other, and it's so much fun, and it's witty, and it's funny to watch, and it's a little bit risque, which I miss that. I miss that because you don't get that anymore. Like Iron Man has it, the Batman movies from like the 80s, and also the Chris Nolan ones have it. Even Superman had it a little bit. Like, come on, bring back the sexiness in superhero movies. That being said, we don't need Mystique to be just naked blue chick. Give her the white costume. It's a really cool costume. Just let her have the white costume in whatever the next X-Men thing is going to be. Just a random little thought, but I always thought that the guys who experiment on Wolverine in those like really fast flashbacks, I always thought that they were like wearing Darth Vader masks because they flash by so quickly. Again, this is beating a dead horse, but the worst comic book movie quote ever is got to be, what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning, the same thing that happens to everything else. I remember even when I was like 11 years old watching these movies and just thinking, that's a weird thing to say. And then like a few years later I watched it again and I decided to look it up. I'm like, am I missing something here? When you watch a movie and you know that you're missing something in a scene or a line, so you start doing a bit of research and you try to figure out what the characters are talking about. I could never find it, and then I see like other reviews for X-Men and people talking about them in retrospect, and they're like, yeah, this line makes no sense and is terrible. So then I was like, oh, I didn't miss anything. It's just a really poorly written line. I don't get it. Like, the same thing that happens to everything else. I mean, it's correct. It's a correct statement. Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are just the best, especially in scenes where they're together. Like in one of the first few scenes, just after the courtroom scene, and they run into each other, and then the ending scene as well when they're in the plastic prison. Just like two of the greatest actors who ever lived, just like back and forth. It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely perfect. They're such fantastic actors, and I couldn't give them enough praise across the probably few hours that I'll spend in total talking about these movies. Hugh Jackman is obviously great. He's still finding his footing, I think, in this movie. There's the famous story where Hugh Jackman thought he was playing like a werewolf type character, so he studied wolves. So that's probably why he's only finding his footing, because he only found out very late in the game that he was meant to be playing a superhero. Um, but I still love his performance in this. You know, instantly just making a character iconic. Even the scene that I put behind me is his introductory scene, and just when he's pointing the claws at like the two guys, it's just fucking fantastic. He's so good in this, and he only gets better. He is the shining light throughout this entire franchise, and I love how he portrayed like Wolverine in the first movie as more animalistic. Like, he sniffs around for finding people's scent, and he kind of growls and grunts and shit. He kind of loses that in later movies, and kind of becomes more of just a generic tough guy superhero. But I really like the little animalistic stuff, because he is meant to be kind of like, that's his mutation, is that he's kind of a more animalistic person. And I also don't mind that he's not like completely shredded. Like, it's more realistic for him to just be a reasonably buff guy. And I don't know, in movies like, say, The Wolverine, the one that's set in Japan, it just looks unnatural. And I know that, like, Hugh Jackman did things to his body that no man should ever have to do to gain that physique. So I'm perfectly fine with the way he looks in the first X-Men movie, because he didn't bulk up as much, but he's still fit as fuck. Like, Ian McKellen is so intimidating as Magneto in every scene, and he just commands every scene with such power and finesse. It's absolutely perfect. His line delivery is perfect. Just every scene he's in, he just takes control. It is amazing. I absolutely loved Ian McKellen's performance in this movie. Probably the best performance in this movie, in like this one specifically, and one of the best across the whole franchise. Just absolutely incredible. And I'm sure that he used his own experience as a gay man to inform his performance as this minority that has been persecuted his entire life. Couple of other notes on, like, the actors. I love how much Ray Park is just loving being the Toad. He's just fucking loving it. Like, he's having a great time out there. And another note is Halle Berry. She's pretty good. Like, she's great in the scene with Senator Kelly when she's talking about her experience as a mutant, which obviously, again, goes back to probably her relating as a black woman. But that accent, whew, why did you even try, Halle? It's like she can't figure out whether or not she wants to go for an African accent or an American accent. So she just merged the two, and obviously she went American after. Yeah, probably should have stuck with that from the beginning, Halle. Still, like, decent performance, just, it throws me off. Final kind of miscellaneous notes. I miss opening credits in movies. Like, I miss, where the camera would just fly through a bunch of shit and names would come up, and it'd be really cool. I think the Raimi Spider-Man movies excel at it. The X-Men movies do them quite well. Not so much in this one, but in later ones they do it really well. Where, like, I think it's like X-Men Apocalypse, something like that. Where, like, yeah, I think it's Apocalypse, where it's like flying through history and everything is in the shape of an X. That's pretty cool. But in this movie it's good. In the Raimi Spider-Man movies it's great. In Hellboy it's really cool. So yeah, I miss opening credits. Cerebro is fucking awesome. It's a big round room where you can just, like, look into the world and see everybody. It's like the coolest fucking thing. I wish, when I was a kid, I wish I had like a Cerebro. Obviously I would have needed the superpowers as well, but I didn't know that at the time. A little detail that I only noticed on this rewatch of the movie, like, this is like my 4th or 5th rewatch of the movie in my life. But something I only noticed on this watch is that Wolverine has little injection points on the inside of his claws where they would have injected the adamantium. I think that's so fucking cool, and that's a detail that I'm sure that they don't put in later films. Again, little details just make the movie. The music is awesome. They weren't quite, I can't remember, is this one John Ottman? I know that John Ottman does the music for, like, X2, maybe 3, He definitely does Days of Future Past and he definitely does Apocalypse, but I'm not sure if he did the music for the first X-Men. I'll check that, but either way, the music in this movie is pretty good. You can very clearly hear, if you listen carefully, you can hear the 90s X-Men theme creeping in. Yeah, not the best music of the franchise. That goes to either First Class or Days of Future Past, but still, good soundtrack. Especially that ending scene with Wolverine and Rogue when he saves her life. The music goes so hard there. Naturally, it's a movie from the 2000s. The CGI is a little rough. You got Wolverine rubber banding around sometimes. Cyclops' laser just isn't quite clean. So yeah, a little bit of rough CGI going on in here, but nothing terribly egregious either. And final note, yes, I want yellow spandex. And it took 24 years, but we got it. Honestly, I was cool with not seeing it as well. But it's nice that we're getting it. I hope we get the cowl. Wolverine's cowl is so awesome, and I feel like comic book movies are finally at a point where they can do it properly. So yeah, look, I'm not crazy about Deadpool 3 so far, but at least Hugh Jackman gets to wear the costume. That was my review for X-Men 2000. Tell me what you think of this film. Are you excited for Deadpool 3 or X-Men 97? I'm going to be reviewing all the X-Men movies throughout the year. It might not be like every 10 days. I know I post a video every 10 days. It might not always be an X-Men video for the next few months, but I'll try and get all of them through before the end of the year. I really want to talk about these movies because they're very near and dear to me. So yeah, let me know what you think. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it. It really does help. Subscribe to see the rest of those X-Men reviews and more talk about media in general. I've still not thought of a proper outro. Yeah, I hope you all have a very, very good day.